In 2020, a man stood in front of the press after losing $1,750 million of other people's money and said this: "I attribute everything that has gone wrong to COVID. I don't think there's a single thing about the business I would have done differently." That man was Jeffrey Katzenberg, co-founder of DreamWorks, Hollywood royalty, one of the most powerful people the entertainment industry has ever produced. And that quote is not the punchline of this story, it's the diagnosis. This is the story of what happens when the smartest people in the room forget to ask the most important question. Stay with me, because by the end of this, you'll be able to spot this pattern anywhere, and it's happening right now. Rewind to January 2020. At the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas, Jeffrey Katzenberg takes the stage, and he demonstrates something genuinely extraordinary. A new technology called Turnstile. Hold your phone vertically, you see one cinematic frame. Rotate it horizontally. The shot widens, perfectly, seamless, instant, beautiful. The audience gave him a standing ovation, and honestly, you can understand why. Because the pitch was perfect. Americans were spending 4+ hours a day on their phones. Short-form video was exploding, but nobody had brought Hollywood-level storytelling to the mobile screen. This was the gap Quibi was going to fill. Premium content, under 10 minutes, for the in-between moments, the commute, the lunch break, the queue. Quibi, quick bites. Steven Spielberg signed on to direct a thriller, one that could only be watched after dark. The app would literally lock you out during daylight hours. Disney signed, NBC signed, ESPN, the BBC. Katzenberg called in decades of favors, and almost everyone said yes. Before a single episode aired, they had raised $1 billion, then another $750 million, $1.75 billion. Before a single paying customer had signed up, the investor pitch was 2 words: trust us. Almost everyone did. Here's what nobody in those rooms was asking. The data already knew Quibi was going to fail 2 years before it launched, and I'm going to show you exactly where it was hiding. The assumption at the heart of Quibi was this: people want premium short-form content, specifically for the in-between moments of their day. The commute, the queue, waiting room. It sounds logical. It sounds reasonable. There was just one problem. The data didn't agree. Study after study showed that most mobile video watching happens at home, on the couch, often with a larger screen within arm's reach. People weren't watching their phones instead of their TV. They were watching their phones in front of their TV. Quick bite on the go moment, it wasn't the dominant behavior, it was a niche. And Quibi built a billion-dollar company around it, without validating it at scale, without testing whether people would actually pay for it. Warning signs were visible before a single frame was shot. The data existed. The behavior patterns were known. But when you have $1.75 billion and industry legends in charge, and the entire finance world cheering you on, who tells them they're wrong? Not the investors, not Wall Street, nobody. April 6, 2020, Quibi launched into the middle of a global lockdown, 2 weeks after the world had stopped. Offices shut, commutes gone, queues replaced by front doors nobody could step outside of. The very behavior Quibi was built for, the movement, the in-between moments, had disappeared overnight. Jeffrey Katzenberg would later say COVID was responsible for everything that went wrong. And look, it's true that the timing was brutal, but here's the question nobody asked loudly enough. If removing the commute broke your product, was the commute the product? Because while Quibi launched into a lockdown, TikTok added 315 million new users in 1 quarter. The appetite for short-form mobile video didn't disappear. It accelerated, just not behind Quibi's paywall. The investing thesis behind Quibi didn't account for free competition at scale. Wall Street backed the brand, not the behavior. COVID didn't kill Quibi. COVID just made the body visible. Here's where I want you to pay close attention, because this is the part that still baffles me. When Quibi launched, in a world where sharing was how content lived or died, you could not share a Quibi clip. You could not cast it to your TV. You could not take a screenshot. There was no desktop version. There was no meaningful free tier. Think about what that means. In the same year that TikTok was being screen recorded and shared billions of times a day, Quibi was blocking screenshots. They had fewer sharing features than a free YouTube account. The industry standard for trial to paid conversion is 30 to 50%. Quibi's conversion rate? 8%. Of the 1.7 million people who downloaded the app in the first week, most walked away. Not because the content was terrible, but because the product made them work for something they could get for free, instantly, anywhere else. And when the numbers started coming in, what did the leadership do? That's the part of this story that's genuinely hard to watch. Coming up in 2 minutes. Quick pause. If you're watching this and finding it valuable, hit subscribe. Every week, I break down billion-dollar stories like this one. The patterns, the decisions, the moments where everything changed. It's free, and it takes 2 seconds. Back to Quibi, because this is where it gets uncomfortable. Quibi's collapse wasn't one mistake. It was 5 decisions, compounding on each other, like cracks in a foundation, and every single one of them has a name. Failure 1. They solved a problem nobody had. The quick bite on the go moment was real. It just wasn't dominant behavior. Most mobile video watching happens at home, near a larger screen. Quibi bet everything on a niche and called it a market. Nobody woke up thinking, I wish Netflix had shorter episodes and only worked on my phone. The question they never seriously asked was, if this didn't exist, would anyone miss it? Failure 2. They spent like a studio. They needed to spend like a startup. Quibi paid up to $100,000 per minute of content. Film economics, competing against free social video. In a startup, spending should behave like experimentation. You test, you learn, you cut what doesn't work. Quibi treated every episode like prestige cinema. Money flowed, feedback didn't. Failure 3. One revenue stream, one failure point. The entire business depended on trial users converting to a $5 to $8 monthly subscription. No serious ad tier, no diversified model, no safety net. When that 8% conversion number came in, there was nowhere to pivot. In investing terms, that's not a correction. That's a total loss. A tightrope is fine until the wind picks up. Failure 4. They built walls where competitors built doors. Every platform that scaled in the last decade, TikTok, YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels, scaled through frictionless sharing. Content travels. People follow the content. Quibi blocked screenshots, blocked clip sharing, blocked casting to TV. They protected their content so carefully that nobody ever saw it. The best marketing in the world is a friend saying, "You have to watch this." Quibi made that impossible. Failure 5. And this one is the hardest to say out loud. When engagement lagged, when early feedback came in cold, when internal concerns were raised, there was no radical pivot. Conviction remained absolute. When you have Hollywood royalty and Silicon Valley royalty sitting at the same table, who's going to be the person that stands up and says, "This isn't working"? Startups don't die from a lack of intelligence. They die when honest feedback stops reaching the top. October 2020, the announcement came. No acquisition, no pivot, no rescue, just gone. 197 days after launch, a content library eventually sold to Roku for a fraction of what it cost to make. Investors took heavy losses. And then Jeffrey Katzenberg sat in front of the press. A journalist asked him, "What would you have done differently?" He said, "I attribute everything that has gone wrong to COVID. I don't think there's a single thing about the business I would have done differently." Meg Whitman, his co-founder, was more measured. She acknowledged real product gaps, misaligned assumptions about consumer behavior. But Katzenberg, after $1.75 billion, after 197 days, after thousands of people lost their jobs, not a single thing he would have done differently. And I'm not saying that to mock him. I'm saying it because that quote is a window into exactly how billion-dollar failures happen. Not from stupidity, not from carelessness, but from certainty so absolute that reality can't get through the door. Here's the question I keep coming back to. Quibi raised $1.75 billion from sophisticated investors, from people who had seen hundreds of pitches. How? Because this is the part that should worry you most. If you're a founder, an investor, or anyone who's ever been in a room where a powerful person was pitching something, the investors didn't fund a product. They funded a pedigree. Katzenberg, Whitman, Spielberg, Disney. Names that carry weight so heavy they can crowd out the questions that should have been asked. What does the data say about mobile viewing behavior? What's the plan if conversion underperforms? Why can't users share content? These aren't complicated questions, but in a room full of industry legends, asking them can feel like a career risk. And right now, in 2026, there are companies raising money on the same dynamic, the same boardroom energy, the same unquestioned conviction. The market Quibi was chasing, short-form mobile video, it exploded. TikTok owns it. Instagram Reels owns it. YouTube Shorts owns it. The window was real. Quibi just built their business on an assumption about how people would walk through it, and never stopped to watch what people were actually doing. I want to leave you with something that I think is genuinely worth sitting with. The people who built Quibi weren't reckless. They weren't naive. They were some of the most accomplished executives in the history of two industries. And they still built walls where they should have built doors. Still spent like a studio when they needed to spend like a startup. Still had a room full of people who nodded when someone should have said, stop. The question Quibi forces us to ask, the uncomfortable one, is not, how did they get it so wrong? It's, who in your room is nodding when they should be pushing back? Because that chair, the one where the honest voice should sit, is the most expensive seat in any company, whether it's filled or empty. I want to ask you two things, and I actually want the answers. First, did you try Quibi? And if you did, what made you leave? Second, and this is the one I really want to hear, what company exists right now that you think is the next Quibi? Overfunded, overconfident, fragile, name it. Let's talk about it. I'll be in the comments. And if this video made you think, the next one might make you uncomfortable, because next week we're going to look at the other side of this story. Not the companies where the product failed, but the companies where the product works perfectly and the numbers are still fake. Product demos that perform flawlessly in a controlled environment and crash in the real world. The science of how investors get shown exactly what they want to see. It's called demo theater, and it's more common than you think. Subscribe, hit the bell. That video drops next week. Until then, stay curious, stay skeptical,